Yeah.
All right. I'm looking forward to when ReaFIR gets better at video editing, because I like working in DaVinci, but it's slow. It hogs a lot of CPU.
Yeah. Why is YouTube stop pushing your premium on me, YouTube? Okay, hello. Sorry we're late. I was kind of late. Oh, I'm hearing everything twice. Now we're okay. So yes, hello. This is what is it? Part 9 of scripting JSFX things, and I got Bo and Leandro with me. Want to say hi, y'all. There's a cat. That's great.
Yeah, that's Tigrid. She wants to go out. So she's kind of whiny right now.
Aww.
Aww.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. Thanks, Arya, for inviting me over.
Of course, it would just be me with my, with my head in the sand. Is that what they say? Or my head up my ass if it wasn't, if you weren't here, and as you can see, right already, you can see some of the stuff that's happening, which has been, it's been quite strange and kind of frustrating. Some of the stuff that's been going down with this effect, where I'm like convinced, like, hey man, I didn't cause this. This is just another thing that's happening. So
just by looking at your screen, I can take a stab at what is going wrong. The screen is flickering, and it's flickering to render user interface. So I bet that there is some sort of race condition where there is the part of your code that renders the graphical user interface and part of your code that does, well, the EQ and the rest of the game logic. And these two parts run in parallel. And sometimes there are parts that, for instance, set a number and another part that will read that number. And if the two parts don't synchronize correctly, so that one is not trying to read while the other one is writing, if these things don't synchronize well, you get these sort of glitches. So I have had this before. I know this.
So that's interesting. So at least you have an idea. And this just started happening kind of out of nowhere. And I thought, okay, I didn't even change anything on the GFX. But the interesting thing is, I got it. I got it right away. It's this free mem, I think. Because this free mem gets space. No, it's not that, because it's starting from a number that is not. Because now we're allocating some memory for our. I don't even know where to start. Okay, let's start with GFX real quick, and then we'll get to the meat of the matter. So the GFX that I'm using on this one is still pretty simple. So all it does is on the init block, it takes a little bit of memory. And then on the GFX block, it's a really simple thing that just wraps the text. So I just write this text, and I have not touched this entire block of the JSFX at all. So I don't know if there's anything here that gives you any glaring issues.
Well, I don't know this UI library that you're using very well. I know that it exists. I read its documentation. I played around, but I never actually used it. So I don't know what could be going wrong with this just by looking at the code for it.
So I guess what I can show you, or just to really quickly explain, all of these are the UI library, basically, and this starts basically the UI block.
And is this something that you must do every cycle? Because this GFX block will run about 30 times a second. It's the thing that refreshes your screen. And I don't know the library very well, so I don't know how to use it. But if UI start is something that you must only do once, then that could be the glitch. So where did you get this code from? Did you adapt it from some sample? Did you read the documentation? what are we looking at here? Because I think this is the first time we are talking about GFX.
It was honestly a long time
Okay.
ago, and I got it from the forum. Because at that point I didn't know that Garant's like UI library has that like tutorial bit to it. So it was just a way of creating a box and putting some text in it. And yeah, this was the code that I just copied off the forums. Whoa, I don't know what that sound is coming from, or if anybody else is hearing that. Oh,
I hear that. So yeah, one thing to look at is this start function, because maybe you should not be calling it on every cycle. Also, this vertical align variable and height, and I guess those are the only two variables we have on this block. But this vertical align block and height, they are variables that are set somewhere else. Are they constants? Are they values that not change?
Yeah, they don't change. I
Maybe
guess
that could
the
be the
only thing that that you may want them to change is that as I resize this, you may want that to adjust itself. But other than that, but yeah, like on the forum it said like put the free mem on the init block, put everything else on the GFX block. So I just kind of did that. Without really understanding the code, which I guess is, the issue. But yeah, like this used to work, then it stopped working. So I can also show you kind of where it stopped working.
Oh, that's good. But before we do that, there is something that I need to address. So you know how you call this UI wrap text function? Yeah, at the end of that call, when you close parens, put a semicolon there.
Okay.
With that out of the way. So you were going to say that you can show me where things went wrong.
So remember last week we said, okay, so now that we're making this EQ multi-channel, then we need to store YN1, YN2, XN1 and XN2, and then ZN1 and ZN2. I don't know if y'all say Z or Z. Cool.
I say Z, but I am okay. It's not like GIF versus GIF, where it is offensive if you get it wrong.
I don't know if I should ask you, because I don't want to know the answer if it's different than me. I'm in GIF club.
Do you feel strongly about the issue?
But I believe it's GIF.
Okay.
Cool,
Yeah, it
then
is
we're
GIF.
on the same page. Bo, what about you? GIF or GIF?
It's short for graphic something, so it's a hard G.
There you go.
GIF.
You heard it here first. It was that was a very solid argument until the dude who invented the format was like, well, I think it's GIF, but I'm like, hey man, like people invent things and turns out they're wrong. So yeah.
Okay, so now that you said that we are starting to talk about memory allocation, right? That big block of memory. I have a guess of what could be going wrong there.
Yeah.
So the graphical user interface library is going to use some memory. It's going to use some part of that big chunk of memory to do its work. For instance, to remember where it drew things in order to be able to wrap the text, or if you click, it needs to know if there is a button underneath your click. So it needs to store some stuff. And my camera died. Isn't that something? What could be going wrong? I don't know. Okay, I will finish explaining what I'm explaining, and then I'll figure this out. So there is this big chunk of memory, and the graphical user interface library is using some of this chunk of memory to do its internals. But we also need a chunk of memory to do, to store previous samples for the multi-channel stuff. So if we try to use the same region in memory, we will clash. And we need to allocate memory separately. We need to allocate memory for the UI library, and we need to allocate memory for ourselves, and we need to allocate different chunks of memory That's very important that we allocate different chunks of memory. So I can see where you are allocating memory for the graphical user interface. It's this line right there. And you are saying that you want to start allocating at 0, and then your next place where you can start allocating stuff, the free memory that you have available to you is at this location, 2938. That's what the free memory variable stands for. It's the next place in the big array where you can start using the big array. So can you go to where we allocate this?
So I think the amount that we're using is this, because we're using up to 64 channels, 6 values, and this is 2938, so this should be fine. But yes, and that part still doesn't work for a few reasons. So let me get...
hang on. So what we are doing is we are reserving the region that goes from 0 up to 2938 for the UI. So when we allocate memory for ourselves, we must be sure to not use that region. We need to start at 2938 onwards. So can you go to the place where we allocate memory for ourselves?
Okay, so I didn't understand that bit because this now explains it. I thought this is starting at whatever it is, 2938. So this is ending at that amount. So yeah, so there's a problem. Okay, so this is the area, and we, like when we did it, we used numchan. So we did like this, but we cannot access this in the init block. So I just...
Yeah, so there you go. We just found the issue right there. So we have X and 1 is a chunk of memory, and we are giving it the address 0. It should be free mem plus 0. And the order of execution, I think, is fixed. I think that we run the init block first, always, and the init block will set free mem, and then we will run the slider block. So, or is this even in the slider block?
This is in
May not
the
be.
Still in the init block, yeah.
Oh, so it is in the init block. Perfect. So there you go. And I think that what you wrote will just work. So if you save, we can see if the glitch is gone.
Indeed. Cool. Okay.
There you go. It's not glitchy anymore. But it's not really the intent. By the way, camera came back.
I don't know what you did, but good job.
I did something. So my camera dies every 30 minutes if I don't have a piece of software open. Anyway, and I forgot to open that piece of software. So my camera died. And then I opened the software and I'm back. Okay. That has to do with taxes. Do you know about this? Yes.
No.
So if you buy your regular DSLR or a mirrorless, and if it is sold as a stills camera, if it is for taking pictures, then there is this limit of 30 minutes that it can record video, right? Every camera that takes a picture can record some video these days. But if the camera can record for longer than 30 minutes, then here in Europe, it is taxed as a camcorder, as a video recorder, which is more expensive. So because of taxes, they cap the limit, they cap the recording to 29 minutes, 59 seconds.
That's crazy. That's some...
Was that an EU thing or Portugal?
It's an EU thing, yeah.
Okay.
And they don't do it only for the EU. I bought this camera when I was living in the US, and it still comes with this limitation. And there is no software hack you can do to fix this. And the camera is perfectly capable. It doesn't heat.
Yeah, sure.
It is fine. It can record for longer. It's just that it would be more expensive if it recorded. The
camera is not technically recording. You're recording. It's streaming. So why should it have a limit?
Yeah, that's the workaround that we all use. We plug the camera to the computer and we record on the computer.
That's just it makes me slightly annoyed because it's like, I don't know. It's a little bit like It's when people who don't know about tech get to make decisions for the rest of the planet, and this stuff happens. So, yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, yeah.
like in Canada, there's all
Okay,
this weird stuff now where you get vaccinated, they give you a terrible piece of paper, and then you got to take that piece of paper to another place and get a QR code to get another piece of paper that's actually the official piece of paper that you got vaccinated. It's like, figure it out. But anyway.
Yeah. Here in Europe, we get a PDF. So we just go to a website, we fill in the form that with the information about the vaccine, and we get a QR code. So
Cool.
it is easier. You don't have
That's
to mess
nice.
with papers. Okay, so I was talking about free mem. So what you wrote is correct. You are starting to allocate xn1 and onwards, starting at free mem. So we don't get the glitch anymore because we are using separate regions in memory. So it turns out it was not a race condition between different blocks of code. It was just us using the same memory without, the same piece of memory for two different things. But the problem here is, it's not, the code that you wrote works, but it's not fully correct, because if you look at free mem after all these lines, and we don't, right? We know that we don't use this in the code. We don't use free mem anymore. But if you were to, free mem would be wrong, because free mem would not be free, actually. It's not free. It's occupied by x1, xn1, and so forth. So I propose that we write this differently. And it will amount to the same, but it will work the same, but it will read different. And the free mem variable will really represent the next chunk of free memory from this line onwards. And that's something that we may need to do in the future. We may need to have more memory allocations, and then we can just keep using free mem that way. Okay, so how do we do this? Well, plenty of ways of doing it. My preferred way, and that's something that I also used in my AutoMixer, is in a single line, I will write multiple statements, multiple things in a single line. So the way that I would like to do it is like this. xn1 equals free mem, semicolon. So that means xn1 is the place in memory where you have some free memory to work with. And then on the same line, because it is conceptually the same thing, you are allocating some memory. Then I say space free mem plus equals. And that's my style of writing it. So now you can say, what is the size of xn1? How much memory are we allocating for this guy? Which in this case, we know to be 64. So you can just say 64. And semicolon. So now, at the end of this line, right where our cursor is, when we get to that place when we are running the program, or when ReaFIR is running the program and we get to that place, then the free mem variable really represents a chunk of memory that is free. And then you can do that on the next line as well. xn2 equals free mem, semicolon.
Okay. And then?
Because xn2 is free mem. That's where we have some memory available to us, and so on and so forth. And the cool thing about using it this way is that we don't have to play the trick of multiplying by 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 like we do in the following lines, because we are not working off of a base address and then calculating the offsets. We are just moving that free mem variable along. And if you follow this pattern, you can allocate things with different sizes and it reads nice, or at least it does to me. I mean, it's a very personal thing. I have never seen anyone else doing it this way, quite the same way.
Well, I like it because I get your logic, and basically, like, I look at this and I go, we have 64 for this variable, 64 for this variable. I don't need to know this, and I'm assuming like if my GFX grows and it needs more memory, that's what the setup is doing. It's asking for more. So then all of this stuff just gets shifted over to the next free slot, right?
I don't know how the UI library, but I assume that it just allocates all the memory it may ever need, because you are calling this on the init block. So it has no other opportunity to allocate more memory or to free memory. So it is an internal thing about the library that the version that you have on your machine right now needs 24, 38 slots. In the future, it may need less or more as the code changes and more features are added, or some features are removed, or some memory allocation is done differently. It may need more or less memory. But I don't think that during the execution of your script, when you're, of course, not changing you're not updating the UI library, you don't change the amount of memory that is allocated. And that is a common situation for these kinds of programs. If you are writing a general purpose program that is like a text editor or something, or a browser or whatever, you are allocating and freeing memory all over the place. But with real-time audio processing, it's much more common to allocate all the memory you're going to need up front and then just use that memory. It is faster to do it this way, and you don't have a lot of resources. When you're processing audio in real time, you have to run your code 48,000 times a second. So it's, if you can, it is better to allocate everything up front. And it seems like that's what the UI library does. And that's what we are doing as well. In fact, we are being conservative here, and we are allocating 64 positions, while we could just allocate numchan.
Well, the reason I
positions.
can't use numchan is you can't access it in the init block.
Well, but you can access it in the slider block.
I can still just move all this stuff over down there.
I'm not sure that numchan is available on the slider block, but I remember that there is some kind of hacks. Maybe having a serialized block will force that variable to be available, but never mind that. Just keep it conservative and allocate 64 positions. That's fine.
And then there's another issue that happens here, and I did try to move this to different blocks, and still the same thing happens, and random things happen every time, and maybe we can go over this. But basically, one of two possible things can happen. One is that when we start the thing, the first value that goes on these things are astronomical values. These things that are supposed to be audio are in various places in the free mem block and stuff like that. So major clip, if a value that's supposed to be between -1 and 1 is at 2938. And then the other thing is, oh yeah, go on.
Arya, sorry. Can I clarify this one? Because this one is easy. 2938 is not a sample. It is not a value from that big chunk of memory. It is the address, the base address at which we are storing the samples.
I mean, like, if we run the plugin right now, xn1, which is going to our EQ, is this number. It's not?
It's not. That's it. xn1 is not going to our EQ. xn1 is the position in memory where we find the sample that goes to our EQ. In fact, we don't use the variable xn1 bare. We use xn1 open brackets, some index, close brackets. So we are indexing into the memory by doing that.
So I'm doing that down here, but when I run the EQ, so you can see like the values that Zn is outputting are nuts. There's no decimal point there. They're like astronomical values. And then xn and yn sometimes are 0, or sometimes xn and yn we're getting values, and then these were all 0. So I fucked something up, but I don't know what, and I couldn't figure it out. No way that I'm doing. Yeah, I didn't know if I should feed these channel index things into my functions, or what's the deal?
Yeah, so I think that what we need here is to store xn, yn, and zn in chunks of memory as well. Because think about how this code is going to run. There is this loop, looping over all the channels. And then it's going to go the first time around the loop, and it's going to see a line that reads xn equals a sample. Then it is going to go around the loop. So now if we were on the left channel, it's going to go to the right channel this time. Going around the loop, it's going to go to the right channel. And then it's going to say that xn1 for the right channel, xn1 equals xn. So we are assigning something that is the current sample on the left channel, and we are saying that that is equal to what was supposed to be the previous sample on the right channel. We are mixing channels. It's just a complete mess. It doesn't really make sense that way. I think that the intent here is we will have xn as an array as well. It will be indexed with the channel index, and we'll keep the xn, well, the multiple xn's that we have. We'll keep them separate for the different channels. Does that make sense?
But are we then storing them after this function? Because I mean, zn is like going to be here. It's going to be the last line of this function. So can we have to store them on the sample block? Or is there something I'm not getting?
I don't think I understand your
so
question.
I mean, okay, so we're giving these chunks of memory up here. I should really do this. Where is it? Command and P. Yeah. So up here we are allocating some memory to this stuff, and then down here we are using them. And then in the last stream we talked about, well, we don't need to store xn and yn and zn because we are live generating those as audio comes in. So if we are to store these values, well, we can allocate them a chunk of memory up here. But the actual storage, like when is that taking place? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Well, I think that it would just work out if we just transform xn into an array and we start indexing with the channel index. I don't see what could go wrong. Instead of having a variable, we now have a chunk of memory with multiple positions, and I think it will just work out.
So I guess this is another place where your code is really awesome because I don't need to modify anything, right? I just put this here and it should work. And I will also make this for zn and yn. I feel like sometimes by mood I say z and sometimes I say z. I don't know where I stand on the issue of z versus z. Z's dead. All right, here we go. And then replace.
And now that we are talking about memory allocation, there is a small thing that is optional, but it's a good practice. We can hint to ReaFIR how much memory we are using. We can tell ReaFIR we are only using this much, and then ReaFIR will maybe use some of the rest of the memory for other things. So it's a good practice to say this is the amount of memory that my effect is actually using. Go ahead and do whatever you need with everything else.
Interesting.
So the way that works is, I'm going to the documentation right now because I don't really remember the name of the function, but
I can also do that just so the folks can see.
So if you go to the JSFX documentation for memory, it says that it's free mbuff.
I've seen that.
And you are going to notify the memory manager, so that is ReaFIR. You're going to notify ReaFIR that you're no longer using a portion of the local memory buffer. And this doesn't really do anything that you can tell. It doesn't like clean the memory. It's specifically saying here in the documentation that it's not going to free the memory or clear the memory and fill it with zeros. There is no guarantee to what ReaFIR will do with this. It's just a hint that ReaFIR, if you need more memory, then you can use this one that I'm not using.
I think I was in the wrong documentation there. Or was I not?
Yeah, go to the memory slider section. There is
Cool.
memory/slider/fft, and go scroll down just a bit, and then you see
Free
memory
and buff.
utility free and buff, and then you have to call free and buff with the first index that is available.
Mm-hmm.
So that is our variable. We have a variable that stands for the next chunk of memory that we are not using. So as the last thing you do after you have allocated everything, in other words, right at the end of the init block, you can call free and buff with the argument free
Cool.
mem.
Yeah, I don't see why we wouldn't do that. So free and buff.
Which I guess is also a nice way to say to the reader of this code, I am done with memory allocation. In case your init block has more stuff in there, this is a good hint of I am done. From now on, I'm doing other things. Okay, so we have now X, Y, and Zn as chunks of memory, and we need to use those chunks of memory accordingly. So you know what to do.
I'll go channel index. I still foresee something going wrong, but I guess let's just see if it does. You know what is also weird is that at one point while I was implementing the code, I had a stereo effect, and I was like, "Oh, this works really well," except that somehow the filters started sounding more subtle. So I was like, I don't understand the math enough to understand what's going on, but why are they going more subtle? Is it like because they're cutting 3 dB now from 2 channels that should be actually more or less subtle? So yeah, I wasn't sure what's going on with that. And then at one point, I didn't really modify anything. I was just like, I don't know, maybe full recompile reset or something to that effect. And then it was like, you know what? Fuck you. I'm not working at all now.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. I guess it's the advantage and disadvantage of this live environment in which you are coding. When you save, it's not necessarily fully resetting the thing, so it can be hard to tell how you got into a certain stage.
Also, side question, just for like better readability, if I just put a line break here and just kind of slide this over, that's not gonna mess with anything, right?
It's not going to. It's all right to do that.
Because yeah, it really like the way, and I also just have the trigger finger of shift and mouse wheel to try to go this way, and then I can't, and then I get frustrated.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely hate horizontal scroll. Yeah, that's all right.
Cool beans. All right. And I suppose also here and also here. I did try to take this out of the equation as well to see if it's to see if this bit of code is the issue, but it wasn't. And yes, this is still mono.
It is not even. Well, let me think about it. Yes, it is mono. It is mono, but channel index is a variable that is not even available to you outside the loop. Well, actually, it is available to you outside the loop, but it has a stupid value in there. Outside the loop, it is one more than the number of channels that you have. So if you have 2 channels, your stereo, then channel index at this point is going to get you the 3rd channel, which doesn't even exist. So it's going to be some junk that happens to be in that place in memory. So that's not what you want to do. If you want this to be mono, I guess you need to use YN and ZN at 0, which is your left ear. But also, you could move these 2 lines into the block above. And instead of saying, so go ahead, move the lines. And then instead of saying SPL0 equals SPL1 equals YN.
I'll just bring them back.
Well, first of all, now you have access to the channel index, so you can use yn at channel index and zn at channel
Okay.
index, right?
But did you have another idea with this?
No. Go ahead and change yn and zn to include the channel index situation.
Mm-hmm.
And also, now you don't want to assign to SPL0 and SPL1 if you want this to be multi-channel for real. You want to assign only to one channel, the channel index.
Yeah. So I go SPL like this. So with brackets instead of square boys. And same dealio down here. See, Bo, this makes me think. I think at the very first episode, you were like, oh, instead of scripting a whole EQ, why don't you just write scripts to do the quizzing thing on top of an already existing EQ? I should have listened to you. But it's good. I'm learning so much, and it's weirdly, it's weird. It's good. It's good. Knowledge is power, yo. Stay in school, kids. Okay.
Okay, so now I think that this may work.
Okay. So you know, okay. Tell me if this is very noobish. But like, so I understand that this is the memory location that this sample is now stored in. But also, it's like, for me, I was expecting to see these be floating point numbers so I can know that things are good. And now it's like this. It's like confusing to me. So I wish there was like another way, but I don't understand enough about this stuff to be like this.
Yeah, so that is an unfortunate thing about this inspector on the right. It does not support the memory. You cannot really look at that big chunk of memory to see what's going on in there. There is a quick hack for us to get some introspection. It's not going to be great, but it's better than nothing. You can do it like this, in the loop or after the loop. It doesn't really matter where you put this. So just put a line of code somewhere that reads like debug equals and then, for instance, xn at 0. So now we can look at the debug variable on the right pane, and it will be that specific region in memory, that specific place in memory. So we don't get to see the whole memory, but at least we get to see one position in there, which sometimes helps.
So if I run this now, well, I guess now we got to get some audio into this thing to see what's what, right?
Well, first look for the debug variable. It should be all zeros at this point, I suppose.
Yes, it's 0.
It is 0.
I don't know what this is, by the way. The gnarly S rate. That's not part of the code that we have. Gnarly S rate hack. It's just showed up.
Yeah, maybe there is a variable called debug in the UI library. And that's what you're seeing, because you are seeing all the variables from inside the library as well, right? We see our variables like A0, but we also see stuff below that we didn't write.
Like UIX.
For instance, UIX stuff.
Okay.
And that's because from ReaFIR's perspective, we wrote that. ReaFIR doesn't know that we are using a library that we didn't write. So ReaFIR just shows the variables to us. And that's kind of convenient in some situations because we may be working on the library. So there is that. But maybe the library has some debug going on. So maybe instead of calling it debug equals something, write like IDDQD equals something.
Okay, yeah. I'll call it, yeah. IDDQ debug. Yes, cool beans. And now it's right here. I guess I will even call it
Is the debug stuff still there after you renamed the variable?
the debug gnarly s rate. Yes.
Yeah, it seems to still be there. So debug may not be a good name for us to use now. But yeah, ZIDQ debug is
Cool.
a perfect name.
I put that there just so I see it down here with the relevant stuff. It's probably better to
Fine.
whatever. So
I would call it AAAA or something, or maybe underscore debug. Maybe underscore will sort first.
oh, but I don't want it to be first. I want it to be down here.
Okay.
So, and I guess that's something I learned overall while doing this is that if you have some parameters you want to look at, or if you have some variables you want to look at together, put a thing. So I put all my game stuff, just call them game underscore stuff, so that they kind of show up at the same place. But anyway, let's.
And it's also nice for the reader because it tells that these things are related.
I did put these things, so it's kind of, and mostly it's really for me more than the user per se, but at least I know like where all the stuff is. But then I thought, hey, maybe also for this side it'd be nice to give these names so that they kind of fall next to each other. But anywho's, let's test this baby. Oh, welcome back, Bo. I didn't realize you were gone and I was saying stuff to you, and then I was like, hold on a minute.
Oh, sorry.
No,
I
that's
missed
okay.
That.
It was I said some stupid stuff. Okay.
How so?
I was just like I wish I listened to you, and instead of coding an EQ, we just used an existing EQ to code the quiz. But then I was like, we learned a lot. Hopefully some people learned a bunch. Yeah.
I'm learning
Cool.
stuff. I'm learning stuff on sort of how it's like you just said, like sorting things and the pain, the right pain there, and so even if I don't sort of understand the code per se, I'm learning stuff about sort of how to organize your coding. So that's great. That's super awesome. I'm a total newbie. So
cool. Yeah, I guess that is what it's all for. So Leandro, are you seeing what's happening right here? Like should I play it? Because I'm already thinking these values are weird. It should not work.
Which values are weird?
Like these. Shouldn't these change? I guess these won't change. We no longer see the floating.
No, in the init block we are saying we allocate this chunk for this chunk for that chunk for the other stuff, and then the init block is over and we don't change anything anymore. So it is expected that xn doesn't change because it's just the base address of the region in memory. The values in memory are changing, as we can see in the ZIDQD debug variable.
That explains it. So, all right, so I'm just going to turn this up and see if our EQ is working. I'm working in stereo. I'm just going to use white noise. Why not? And just because on mixes, it's harder to detect sometimes, but...
You're not using the colored noise generator?
Sorry?
There's a colored noise generator, a JSFX?
No, I'm using Leandro.
You don't need to use an audio clip.
I'm using Leandro's thing.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah, you gotta do
that.
that.
I'm just using. I always print white noise things as items, because if they are plugins on your track, they're always on, and then I need to go mute it, and that slowly makes me age. So I would just rather do it like this. Let's even why not? Let's make this quad. Who are we hurting? And -18 sounds good. And then I just glue this. So instead of having to remember to mute things, I don't do that. How come it glued to stereo? Whatever. It's stereo. Okay. Here we got white noise in the wild. We make this easy. Okay, something happened. I guess it is pretty tough to hear if our effect is still applying to stereo.
Can I suggest
Sure.
something? What if we have on the left channel 400
Yeah,
hertz,
cool.
on the right channel 1000
Cool.
hertz?
Yeah, that's what I thought of as well. Do you have a signal generator, Leandro, or we gotta?
Yes, it is called the tone generator.
Tone. Okay. Beep 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 beep. That's you. Let's put it over here, and we'll print. Let's.
Yours is much better, Leandro, than the standard one.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
So you have to finish it. There is a stream, or not actually a stream. Back then I didn't have the setup to actually stream, but I had a video.
Oh, I don't know why I did that.
And I had 2 of them and was supposed to have more, but I never completed. There's still work to do on this.
I did it kind of dumb, but whatevs. So we have 440, and I'll do 220 just because 1000 is hurts my ears.
Yeah, it's a bit atonal.
And
that's what she said.
Yeah. Here we go. And I had a hotkey for this, but of course, when it's time to remember such hotkeys, I never, whoopsie daisy, I never do. I also had a hotkey for that, but I don't remember that. But anyway, we got this, and we do, I'll try one thing, and if it wasn't that, it is that. Cool. But did that fuck that up?
Sounds like 440.
Sounds like 440 on both sides.
Bo, we are listening on mono, so we cannot tell.
Yeah, that's true. Sorry.
No, but I'm just hearing, how come I'm hearing both of these as the same thing?
Yeah, I should be hearing 220 as well, because they're not panned. Like,
yeah, you should still hear both. I think when I generated this last baby, something weird was up. I made this 220, but I forgot to.
Sorry, Arya, but why aren't you using the EQ thingy on the bus and just use 2 separate tracks? So you have one 220 and one 440, and then you test your EQ on the bus.
I'm just printing a file. I don't know, whatevs. I guess it's good. Yeah, so that's 220. That's 440. Yeah, I don't know. Your way is probably better, but I just was like, okay. Yes, so I don't know if y'all hear this, but I'm hearing the 220 on my left, 440 on my right. And let's fire up the EQ.
I'm here.
And well, so it is hard with only 2 sine waves to hear if the EQ is in place, but the stereo-ness is preserved. So that is a good sign. And so now that we know the stereo-ness of it is preserved, let's check it with this white noise. Oops. Yes, and that is working. And anybody want to guess what the EQ is doing right now?
I would say it is a high shelf that is boosting.
Perfect, yes. Boom. And then it says click to generate.
Arya, I think that when you were typing or trying to find your keyboard shortcut, you typed a capital F on the code.
Oh, shit. Yes,
you see that?
I do see it. It was to pay respects. All right.
Okay, so what is up? It seems like we fixed the issues, right?
Issues. One thing that happened is, so there's one last piece, I guess, to this puzzle, and that is the ramp action, which we started to talk about in one of our streams, and then you had to leave and we stopped, and then the week after that we didn't really come back to that. That said, I think I can figure that bit out, and then like maybe let you know next week. So I'm down to do something new. I'm also down to do whatever you want, or if Bo has an idea. Or I'm also there are two other things that I really am curious to do. One is like looking at code with JSFX when it comes to MIDI. And the other one is looking at video JSFX, just to kind of like learn a little bit of each in parallel.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and also like honestly, I feel like with Lua scripting actions, I'm like getting somewhere, and with JSFX, I take one step forward and I see a landscape of stuff I don't understand, and I get depressed. So yeah.
That feeling never goes
Right.
away. It only gets worse. The more you know that you
Right.
don't know.
Dunning-Kruger.
I want to throw something
Sure.
else on the list, which is the thing that we started last
Mhm.
week. So we still have a lot of work to do on the reverb if we want to get that done.
Yeah, let's do, yeah.
But I am all up for something fresh, like video processors can be fun. And we need to do the video processor for the typing thing that you do on your videos. I don't know if you still do that on your videos, but if you are still doing that, my man, you definitely need to write the code to do it for you.
I mean, it's something, it's one of those things, right? The tools dictate the workflow. So because it was annoying to do, I have stopped doing it. And if I have a thing that does it conveniently, I'm going to do it all the time. So it's, I am down to do that. You're right. We should do also that reverb. So yeah, lots of things to do. I don't know. Bo, do you want a tie break?
I'd love to do a compressor.
Oh, you just you went.
I have an idea for a
number
leveler.
Nothing. You just went door number 3. Okay, tell us your compressor idea.
My compressor idea is based. I don't think there's a simple way to explain it, but it's based on the Hall filtering, where you have this. There's a long ass thingy. Oh god. You know when you square numbers and when you take the square root of numbers, you get different curves. So what I want to do, I want to take the square root of samples, sum them up in a sort of EMA RMS. So that will push the low levels up. You get what I'm saying?
So far, I'm with you.
So the transfer curve will be, if I sort of draw it. So there's going to be a transfer. Can you see this?
Hold on. I cannot, and probably the users will see even less. But let me switch to switch to full screen.
So there's going to be.
Show it. But you also have a background blur thing going that's making it impossible to see.
Oh, so that's why. Hang on a bit. Why isn't it?
Oh, sorry about my
that's
legs,
weird.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Never mind. Sorry about my bad blurring background. But so you know, Leandro, when you sort of take the square root out of samples, it's going to be a transfer curve that goes. So instead of it being a straight 45-degree line, Leandro,
yes,
there's going to be.
I think you mean to square the samples, not to take the square root of them, right?
No, if you square them, there's going to be a reverse hump.
Okay, so how do you even start this? How do you take the square of the negative samples? Do you go into complex numbers?
Oh, for the compressor. So we're going to create a gain signal, a sort of modulating signal. So all of the samples are going to be positive numbers, and they're going to be smoothed. So it's like an RMS.
I see. So the RMS is going to be, well, I suppose always negative, but you are going to treat them as positive.
It's got to be positive, isn't it?
Well, RMS is measured in dB, which is a negative number.
Oh yeah, yeah, sure.
But you
it's
can always
also
just take the absolute value of that, and I'm following. Okay.
yeah, sure. So the regular RMS is going to emphasize peaks just because of how it treats samples. Because you get a transfer curve that's sort of like that instead of the sort of the straight 45-degree. So it's going to emphasize the peaks, whereas if you take the square root, it's going to emphasize all the low levels. So you have two different RMS levels, one with the square root and one with the square. And this with the square root is going to be twice as long. That's the idea. And I'm not sure if that works, but that's going to be twice as long as the square root. Then you sum those, and then you smooth that value, and you use that value as the modulating signal for the compressor. So it's gonna push low levels up and the peaks down simultaneously, because the square root thing is gonna push the low levels. No, sorry, you're not gonna sum them. You're gonna take the square rooted RMS minus the peak RMS. So it's gonna push up and then push up the lower levels, and then sort of the peaks are gonna sort of push it down again. So that's
kind of show it on this graph. Let me just make a fresh copy of this.
Yeah.
So if I got this compressor right here, this compressor right here, this compressor right here. Hold on, I just okay. So right now nothing's happening. Basically, you want this line to be across here. So everything that is really quiet will be loud. Anything that is really loud would be quiet.
Sort of, yeah, sort of. So it's not going to be one, it's going to be two different transfer curves. So if you look at, so the lower levels will be pushed up.
So like this.
The other way. Yeah, like that. So that's for the lower levels. So, and then the peaks are going to be pushing it down. So you have two different sort of modulating signals that are kind of RMS like. Or they're very RMS like. You take the lower level minus the peak level. You take a smoothing of that, sort of short smoothing with that. Then you have the modulating signal. So you have, i.e., as a gain, just a simple gain signal for the original signal.
So would that be like an upwards compressor that feeds to a downwards compressor, basically?
And
okay,
yeah,
cool,
exactly.
Cool. Well,
that sums it up pretty neatly. It's an upward compressor that's also a downward compressor in one.
Not to discourage the making of this, but have you seen this?
I know Waves have one. OTT, yeah.
And this is
Psyche has its own version of OTT,
but
okay.
it's doing something similar. I think it's doing upwards, and it's also 3 bands. So 3 bands, and then it does upwards, and then it does downwards on top of that. So it's.
I'm not sure about the code though, but how is he getting? How is he obtaining the modulating signal for it? How sort of the gain signal?
Leandro,
sorry,
you wanna take this?
Oh, I have no idea.
So it should be SPLs. It should be like summing or sort of SPL something.
I guess let's read this part of the action. Oh, interesting.
That's the graphical user interface.
Yeah, it's interesting that it's at the bottom. I didn't know you could do that. I guess this
SPL
is...
output
the blocks can go in any order, and it's usual to have the GFX block as the last one.
Okay. Learn something new every day.
Oh, I thought you had to sort of start with the init block.
No, the blocks can go in any order. It's just it's conventional to start with the init block, then the slider block, then the block, then the sample block, then the GFX block, and somewhere in the middle the serialized block.
Cool. I guess I'll fix that in the EQ as well.
The OTT is super cool, but on some material or a lot of material, you can actually detect the frequency bands. They don't interact phase linearly or linearly. That's part of the charm with it. It sounds really good on electronic music. But the moment you put it on anything acoustic, you use the phase differences, phase shifts gets really annoying.
Yeah, because like if you're upwards
cool
and right at those lines, I can see that happening, and it's sounding weird. So I mean, yeah, I don't know, Leandro, are you up for this?
I am, but I don't want to take up too many projects. We already have the EQ, and I think that you were going to work on the part of the EQ that is
the RAM
that we already talked about. So the target values moving around, and then followers.
Yeah.
And then there is the reverb.
Yeah.
And then
the reverb.
Yeah.
I think this
and then there is the video processor stuff. So the appeal of the video processor is that I think we can finish it relatively quickly. Probably next week we can finish it.
Cool.
But this compressor stuff, I think it will be more complicated because we will need to compute RMS, which is not difficult, but it's not trivial.
Yeah.
And overall, I think it's a bigger body of work. And I would like to commit to the reverb because it does not exist, and we already have the creator of the idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed.
So I would say let's put this on the stack.
Sure.
But let's prioritize something else.
So okay, I'll go to this. Ooh, I just saw something that I'm so excited
The thing is,
about.
sorry, but in my head the compressor is simple, but like you said, you're the coder, Leandro, so you're better at making the estimate for that.
No, I'm not. But just computing RMS is not exactly difficult, but it's not trivial. And taking the squares of things and square roots of things, that's easy. That's
I'm calling this compressor not OTT because it's not OTT, but it's also not the not OTT from Scikit. It's not OTT, but it's also not OTT.
What's OTT short for? I
Over
remember
the
reading
top.
that someplace. Over the top.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, first of all, this is where viewers come in. If anybody has a comment like, "Oh, do this or do that," then you can really easily help us decide. And I think, okay, personally, for my personal feelings, I would love to have a video JSFX. That said, maybe if we started on the reverb and we already have the delay line, maybe the more linear, responsible, educational thing would be to do the old like just keep at the reverb until we got all the components of it. Yeah. So I guess
just as a sort of thought, there's a bunch of compressors, there's a bunch of reverbs available for ReaFIR, but there's not that many video effects though, are there? So doesn't the world need more video effects?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do the video effect.
Cool.
It will not hurt.
So on that angle, I think the video effect is a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
all
if
right,
I
let's do it.
It's still harping on about my compressor. I did try and make a compressor that sort of had this was like 6 months ago. No, it was more. I had a crude RMS thingy chasing one value. So the moment it got it on above a value, it pushed it down, and the moment it got below a value, it pushed it up. But it was kind of cool, but it sort of went. It didn't work as well as expected. But the idea So that's the seed of the idea. It's a really cool idea to sort of have it chase a value, or have it do it multiple things at one time. So
well, this sounds
maybe I should
different
just
than
code it
the other
myself.
thing that you were saying. But so that is like a rider, but it rides RMS instead of riding true peak.
It produced an RMS level of the incoming signal, and then I sort of chose a level. Go to level 1 as in 0 dB. So it's always chased 0 dB, where I can sort of set it lower, so it always chased a lower value depending on how high the value was.
So how much look ahead do you need to make that work, though?
Oh, 0 basically.
Oh, but how is it?
But that was an exponential moving average. I think it was an exponential moving average.
Oh, I don't know what that is.
There is a video about it on my channel.
Cool.
It's one of my favorite videos.
I've watched it many times, Leandro.
Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah, but if you want to learn more about RMS, there are basically 3 ways to compute RMS. One is super slow, but it's directly from the definition of RMS. One is the one that everyone uses. It is relatively fast, and it is almost as correct as the canonical. I think it's actually as correct as the canonical version, modulo some very technical details. And then there is the fast way of computing things that is super, super fast, but it's not as precise. And that's the exponential moving average. In most cases, it doesn't matter.
Cool. But yeah, I mean, in terms of practicality, like, like the reverb.
I can send you that compressor though, Ari.
Sure.
If you want to try it out.
I mean, yeah, but overall, like, I think the reverb and compressor would be for us to learn about it. Whereas the video processor thing, if we pull it off, I would actually be using it every week. And other people will probably use it and download it versus like, they'll be like, well, I'm going to use a compressor.
The video is the best idea.
Cool.
I think the more I think, sort of marinate in it.
All right. So let's get to this. Arya already got the ball rolling. With a video processor, we are going to use the same language as JSFX. The language is EL2, but this is not JSFX. So it's the same language, the same syntax. We still put the semicolons in the same places, but we don't get to use the same functions, and we don't have the blocks the same way.
Okay.
Well, for one thing, it doesn't really make sense to have the blocks because we don't process samples with the video processor. You process frames. So we will not have the blocks. We will not have the descriptions. The sliders work differently. So it's almost the same, but it's not quite the same. So first of all, when we want to learn about JSFX, we go to the ReaFIR website and we go to JSFX documentation. But when you want to learn more about video processors, you go to this window, the video processor window, which looks similar, but it's not quite the same. For one thing, we don't have the right pane with the variables. But you go to this and you hit F1.
Cool.
This will pop up a window that has all the documentation in there. And you're like, okay, is this all the documentation? Yes, this is all the documentation you're going to get. Good luck.
Cool.
If you think that the documentation for JSFX and the Lua stuff is bad, just check this out.
Yeah, this is it. Cool.
Yeah, this is it. And typically what I do is I select all and then I copy and paste this into Visual Studio Code just so I can search stuff and I can move around more conveniently, but that's just a matter of preference. That's just how I do it.
I'll do that. If also we're opening the can of Visual Studio Code worms, I have other questions about that, but anyway, I won't go into a whole Visual Studio Code tangent.
Is it quick?
It is not quick. I mean, it's one of those things you think it's going to be quick, and then I looked up a video on it. It's like 3 hours long.
Oh, come on. What is it? Now I'm curious.
Okay, so it is So right now I have my Visual Studio Code recognizing that this is EEL and it's color coding them, but it's not color coding them in a way that I like. It's not the same colors that we see on the IDE. And to change the texts, I found a way of doing it, like somebody explaining how to do it, but it's like insanely convoluted to do. So I was just wondering if there's an easier way to make these colors, because I'm assuming it's taking this color is going EL2, this means comment, make comments this color. I just want to make it dark blue. But seems pretty complicated to do and pretty, like, I can live without it.
I remember trying to do that. I have a PC trying to change the color and the on it, just like exactly like you described it, and it was a total pain.
Yeah.
Just changing the color.
Yeah, it seemed too hard.
Yes, it is a pain.
Cool.
I don't do it myself. I know how to do it, but it's just too painful. In fact, when I'm working in EL2, I don't even have colors. When I'm working with Lua, I turn on the colors, syntax highlighting. Right. That's the name of the thing. The colors are syntax highlighted. So I turn on the syntax highlighter when I'm using Lua because Visual Studio Code has a good syntax highlighter for Lua, but it does not have a good syntax highlighter for EL2. And there is an extension apparently, because I didn't know that, but apparently there is an extension because you have a syntax highlighter there. It's just not very good. And then to customize the colors, you have to create a different theme. And yeah, it's not fun.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, what evs?
And an even trickier issue is to try to improve the coloring, the syntax highlighter itself. So yeah, to change from a dark green to a dark blue is annoying. But to have Visual Studio Code get the parts that matter, like for instance, when you look at the video processor, you can see project_W is in a different color because it is a special variable. It comes with ReaFIR. It's not a variable that you as the programmer define. And ideally, that would be colored differently in Visual Studio Code. To do that, you have to change the syntax highlighter because you don't want to change the color of something. You want to change the meaning of the color.
Yeah.
You want that variable to be special. That is unbelievably annoying to do. So I never bother. I just don't have syntax highlighting for that part, and that's okay. Most of the time, it's
okay. And Visual Studio Code is made by Microsoft, which makes a lot of sense. Because if anybody's used Microsoft Teams, you would also know that the simplest stuff have the most annoying fixes. And it's like, did the person who wrote this ever like actually, I don't know. Microsoft, come on.
I will not blame Microsoft on this one because they are doing the thing that every other text editor does, and it is a complicated program, a complicated problem to solve. Let me just tell you this. Depending on the language, I don't think this is the case of EL2 because structurally the syntax of EL2 as a programming language is very simple. So this does not apply to EL2, but there are other languages in which to decide the color of something, the only way to do that correctly 100% of the times is to run the program.
Or to compile it.
You don't have to compile it, you have to run it. Compiling is not enough because you typically in most programming languages, if you tell a compiler to compile a program, it's going to finish. It's going to compile the program. It may take long. If your program is big, it may take days, but it will finish. But no, I'm talking about running the program, and that is not even guaranteed to finish. There are some programs that don't terminate, and it's impossible for a computer to tell if the program will terminate or not. So literally, there is no computer in the world. It's not just that we don't have the technology to build this computer today. It's not that it's just too expensive. No, mathematically, it has been proven 100 years ago by a very smart person that it's mathematically impossible to pick the right colors for some programs.
Damn.
So it is that complicated of a problem.
Cool.
Okay, it's not just like changing the slider for like you do in the JavaScript or.
Yeah, of course I'm saying general things about general programming languages. In EL2, it's such a simple language that yes, you can color things correctly every time and it will be fine. But there are complicated languages out there. So it is a complicated problem. And that's why Microsoft and every other developer of a text editor has made this infrastructure so sophisticated. In other words, so complex.
Okay.
All right, so we got the thing right here. I'm just gonna try and resize. I'm half of what I do on this stream is try to resize things without losing space and real estate. So any way to hide this, Leandro? I'm sure there is.
Yes, just click on the little files thingies on the left.
On the left, yeah.
On the menu,
There you
yes, just click
Cool.
there and it goes away. Okay, so the best way to learn, well, you read the documentation that we have open there, and some of it's going to make sense, some of it is not going to make sense, but really the way that you learn how to write a video processor is by reading what other people have written. That's the only way to really learn this. So you have already a preset, the text overlay preset. I think it comes with ReaFIR, right? That preset. So that one is a good example because it writes something on the screen. So maybe we can start making sense of it. And I think that the best way to make sense of that is to start removing the parts that we don't want.
Cool.
So how about we start by, that's an easy one. The first line is a comment, and that comment will be the name of the video processor preset. So you see the name text overlay on the top of the screen. That's because of this line. So change that to a comment that is the name of your preset.
Okay, I'm just calling it, it's a horrible name. I'm just calling it text typer because it's like typing, but we'll change that name.
So save that.
Ship lamps.
And then you can see that the name of the video processor changed on the top of the screen. And it also, I think it changes it on the list of effects you have on a track, I think. I don't remember.
Call it screenwriter.
There you go. All right. So next, we have a variable called text. And we don't need that variable, so you can remove it. Remove the font as well. Just remove these lines.
Goodbye. And save it.
And then we have a bunch of parameters for things like positions and colors. And we may want to parameterize things later, but let's start very simple. So remove all of those lines. And those are comments. You can see they start with // but they are special comments using this weird @ syntax. And then they render on the left as these knobs.
Cool.
If you just remove and save now, the knobs will go away. No params.
Cool.
Then there is a bunch of logic here for positioning stuff and getting stuff that we don't need. We just need maybe even just the last line, I think. So
goodbye.
Yeah, I was saying that we are using the same language, but we are not using the same functions. So JSFX str draw, I think, is a function that only comes with video processors. So you can remove everything you have selected. And what JSFX str draw does is it draws a string on the screen. And it is a function that accepts 5 arguments, I think, right? It accepts a bunch of arguments. We'll see how many. But the first argument is the text that you want to draw. So instead of having #text, replace that with a string just delimited with double quotes. So maybe double quotes, IDDQD, double quotes.
We'll go classic.
All right. And then I see some X and Y positions. So I think it only takes 3 arguments, actually, because... on the top in red, we see what the arguments are. But we can just get away with just saying X and Y coordinates. So let's just say like 100, 100.
Cool.
And then remove the rest of the line.
Cool.
Remove this part as well. This is just the Y coordinate.
Oh, okay. Cool.
There you go. So now save this and open the video preview.
Cool.
And let's see if we have written hello world to the screen successfully.
I'm gonna do something real quick because my video now serves as the background upon which I put the two of you. So I'm just gonna put something there. I'm just gonna put the video here, and hopefully that looks more or less the same for everybody. And oh, I guess you need an actual item for this to work because this is right now. Oh, this was floating. Sorry. Do you know what I mean?
I'm not sure that you need an item.
Okay, so pow. And right now in our video, we don't see anything.
I think that we see something.
Oh, but it's black.
I think that the default color is black.
Cool.
So we can use something else to set the color. And we could just go to that preset and see how they define the color. But we can also go to, I happen to know the answer off the top of my head, but we can also go to the documentation and try to find it there. So maybe just go to Visual Studio Code as an exercise and search for like color.
Okay. I'm assuming color is going to be spelled the American way. Yes. Current drawing color. So so RGB things.
Yes.
Yeah.
And these are variables. You can see that it's in the section called special variables used by processors. So you can assign to these variables, and that will change the color used to write.
So if
Can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
Do you sometimes say magic variables? Leandro?
Yeah, magic variables in the sense that they come with ReaFIR and they have a special meaning. ReaFIR will look at the values of these variables to decide which color to use to draw on the screen. Yeah, but it's not a technical term. It's just magic in that sense.
Okay, so it's this predefined variables that come with ReaFIR.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and Aria, what you have to write is GFX_R equals to a number.
Okay. And then that is just from 0 to 255, right?
No, it is from 0 to 1. So when they say 0.1, they mean it's a number between 0 and 1.
So let's make that like this. And I got to do semicolon. Yeah. Oh, there we go. We got a thing.
Yes. But do you see something weird?
I see that it gave us a green screen and the text font is a little weird and the spacing is a little weird and the color is a little weird and everything's a little weird.
Everything is a little weird, yeah. So the green, where is the green coming from? We did not tell anything to be green.
No alpha channel,
it's red.
Right? No, the thing is, to begin with, so we have to think about the concept here. So let's take a step back and talk about the concept. So remember how when we were processing audio, the concept was that samples came in and we would change them and samples would go out. So we have a similar story here. As a frame will come in, a frame of video will come in, and our code will run on one frame. And then a frame of video will go out. And this code that we write will run however many times a second you have, whatever is your frame rate. So if your frame rate is a typical frame rate of 30 frames per second, if you are in America, then what do you use in Canada? Do you use PAL or NTSC?
I'm not even sure. It's so irrelevant nowadays. Like,
oh no, it is. It is.
How so?
If your camera doesn't have the right frame rate, and you have some sort of light behind you,
okay, yeah.
you'll see flicker.
Yeah, so that is PAL. The lights are at 50 hertz. So that's what PAL
All
is.
right, yeah. So like here in Europe, over there in Canada, you are using PAL. So your code is going to run 25 times a second or 50 times a second if you are on a high frame rate. That's the concept. And to begin with, when you're running your code, what do you have to begin with? A canvas. You have a canvas that has nothing in the canvas. But it's not that it is a black canvas. It's not that it's a white canvas or a green canvas. It's junk. It is a piece of memory with junk in there. Whatever was there in the previous frame or something else that ReaFIR has going on. If maybe you are running ReaFIR for an hour, it's going to change. It's unpredictable what you have to begin with.
Cool.
Which is crazy, right? And depending on what you do, you will actually see glitchy animations because you will see the junk in memory that was there before. Crazy.
Wow.
So, to begin with, we don't have a blank canvas, we have junk. So we have to plaster the canvas with something useful. Typically, you would get one of the frames coming in. So if you have several tracks of video in ReaFIR, then your video processor can have access to all the tracks below. And they are just inputs that you can use. And typically you would say, okay, grab a frame from track number 3 below me and draw it on the canvas. Typically that's what you would do. But you can do other things like draw a rectangle, right? So in our case, I suppose that you will want to draw a frame from below and then draw on top of that frame, right? But to begin with, to make things easy, let's just draw a black rectangle or maybe a different color so we can tell that it works.
Sure.
So let's draw like a blue rectangle that covers the whole canvas and that hides the junk. We'll draw a rectangle around that covers the whole screen.
Cool.
Then we will write hello world on top of that.
Cool. Sounds good.
And you can do that with a separate, you cannot do that with a separate effect. A separate video processor will just work as yet another input frame to your video processor. So we have in our code in the video processor, we have to draw a rectangle. We have to write some code to draw a rectangle.
Oh, so I'm not drawing a separate external rectangle to be our canvas. Okay.
No. You can just have a single video processor just like that. And how about we say GFX_B for blue equals 1.
Cool.
Semicolon. And then on the next line, we use a function to draw a rectangle. I forget the name of the function. It is. I don't think so. I think it's more like fillRect.
FillRect. Oh, there it is. GFX fillRect. I've seen this like around.
Yeah. So the documentation says fills a rectangle, something. So we don't want that. Just go ahead and run that. We'll see how that works.
Cool. We got ourselves a rectangle. I'll just make this the size of the canvas. So I guess X and Y will start at 0, which is the edge, the left top edge.
Which edge, by the way? That's interesting. Which edge?
Left top.
Top left.
Yes. Yeah. So the coordinate system is top left is 0, 0 in this case.
And just because I think my project settings are at 2K, I'll do that. Cool. We got a blue. Haha, we got a blue screen.
Yes, but we want our video processor to work regardless of the screen size, and that's super easy. Instead of using fixed hard-coded numbers, you can just use magic variables or special variables. project_w and project_age for width and height.
Beauty, beauty. Very nice. Very cool.
And then save that, and we see a blue screen. We continue to see the blue screen, which is good news. Now, note that our red is no longer red when we write hello world, and that's because we did not set blue to 0. So now we are blending blue with red. But you can say GFX B equals 0, and then GFX R equals 1. That will reset the blue to 0, then set the red. And then we get true red on top of true blue.
I was just A-Bing. Cool. Yes, indeed.
Now, at this point, we have sort of the basic building blocks to write on the screen. There are plenty of things that we would want to do, like setting different fonts, different font sizes, setting different positions for where to draw. But I think that the crucial thing about our effect is something that I don't think we explained on this stream, but for people who have been watching us, you know that the intent is that we will write hello world one letter at a time.
Type sunscreen.
Now,
yeah.
Yes. And how do you want to do that? Do you want to, for instance, how do you want to define the speed?
Yeah, I have an idea.
In which you are writing?
I mean, I will give you my complete ideal of what this would be. It would be that the user controls the rate, which could be per frame. So it could be like 1 a frame, or it could be like 1 every 5 frames, essentially. And then it would be lovely if you could also choose, again, let me know if this is too much, also choose either to type from left and right, or right to left, or center out, where the first letter will be screen center, and as new characters are added, it's expanding in both directions. That would be lovely.
That sounds like fun. Can you take notes of these things? Like comments on the effect source code?
Sure thing. So we want user rate control, i.e. like 1 character per frame, or 1 character per 5 frames. And I don't know, we can get fancy and be like, do you want to set it in frames or do you want to set it in seconds? But the user can always figure that out too. And then, so I guess I'll call it like left to right generation or justification, whatever. Then right to left, and then center out. And another thing that would be good, again, like just because whatever, it's all words, is if there was this exact thing, you could have it on or off. You could have the user choose to have that displayed, this little dot that blinks, or not, just for aesthetic purposes.
Oh, that's sort of old operating system thingy that blinked.
Yeah.
You typed it. Yeah. Okay. What I'm thinking is, when you're talking, you're talking, then you're pausing. You're saying a few words, then you're pausing. Does it need a pause function? So it sort of types up sets of letters, then pauses, then types another set of letters.
That would be nice. I guess what could ultimately also happen is that, yes, it does need a freeze. Yeah, why not? A freeze would be good. Freeze function. I guess you could always use 2 video items, but maybe you want to type one thing, freeze that, type another thing below it. For that, we can get another item.
So the way the user interface for that in DaVinci is this curve that you sort of draw in. So it type this bit of text, and then sort of a pause, and then this bit of text, and then a pause, and then. But you can't draw sort of a line to this. You don't have that user interface here. But so I wouldn't know what would be a smart function for that. But if you could time it, could you use automation? the automation lanes?
Yeah,
that?
for video, you can use a lot of automation to do a lot of stuff. So yeah, because when in the end it's generated, we are saying, so we can do two things. I guess one is we can say like when the string is finished, when you typed everything, just stop. And then if the user needs to continue, they just make a new item. They just put another instance of the video processor on there. Or I guess, I don't know how easy it would be if it's like a toggle, like a bypass or something where you go freeze on, you automate that, off, keeps generating.
In my head, I sort of made a thing where you set the frame, you set the number of letters per frame via an automation lane. So you can stop it when you want. So stop it and then sort of continue and then stop.
You just set the rate to 0 characters, basically, at one point. And that is like stop.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So you control the sort of the speed of the letters plus the pausing with an automation lane. So you kill
two birds, one stone.
Two birds with one. Yeah. If it's doable, Leandro.
Did we lose Leandro?
Oh, he's gone. Audio's gone.
Yes, Leandro, I think we lost your voice.
Am I back now?
You are.
Yeah.
Huh. I just learned something. If you have multiple tabs open in ReaFIR and you switch to a different tab, then audio doesn't go through.
There's a preference for that.
Of course. Why wouldn't there be?
Thank you, Justin.
Yeah. Okay. So the way I think about this is maybe we could. Oh, there you go. You were finding the.
I never know where things are, but once I see it, I will be like, there it is. Wait, did I go over? I may have gone over, and now I'm wrapping back. Boop, 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 boop. Maybe it's not called tab. No, don't embarrass me in front of my friends, ReaFIR.
There should be a search function in the preference.
There is. I'm doing that right now. It's just not finding it. It's embarrassing in front of my friends.
God, I missed that.
No, without that, like this preference window, I would never look at it if you couldn't search through it. I would just be like, hey, whatever it is, that's how I'll deal with it. Anyway, I'll figure this one out for you. I think the name is something else. Maybe some.
Oh, don't worry about it. I don't really care. I had a different tab open for no good reason. In any case, I think that the way we could do this is we could have as one of those knobs, one of those params on the video processor that is the progress, and it starts at 0. So at 0, it doesn't draw any letter, and then it ends in 1, and at 1, it draws all the letters. And then you can create an automation lane for that param, and then you can draw the curve as Bo was explaining.
Cool. That sounds great. So we'll say, we'll make this progress bar /param. Cool. We can even, should we just start maybe writing one of these? Param.
Yeah, go ahead. It's at param column.
At param column.
No, it's actually at param one column. Yeah, and then I forget. We can either look at the docs, or you can find an example of this in another video processor. Okay, I have the docs in front of me. I can dictate the things if you want. But you can also go look at the docs. It's at the top of the thing. It's right at the beginning.
Boop, 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 boop. What the hell happened?
It's right at the beginning. It's the first thing in the documentation.
Boom.
Just scroll to the top. Yeah, there you go. So it is param. Oh, and it's actually not param one column.
Oh,
actually, it is. You can have a space there, it seems. Whatever. So it is param one column, and then a variable name that's going to be the name that you see in the code.
So I guess progress will be our first one.
Yes. And then space, and then in single quotes, the name that the user will see.
In single quotes, so I guess we'll go progress. Let's call this for us maybe something like scroll progress, whatever. Something, whatever. In single quotes, okay, that's what the user sees.
And then you have to give 5 values.
Okay.
The default value, which I guess is 0 in our case. The minimum value, which is again 0. The maximum value, which will be 1. The center value, which I don't really care, but that's that affects the rotation of the knob on the screen. So maybe if we put it as half, the knob will make sense. And then the step. And the step we want to be very granular. So maybe like 0.0001 or whatever.
I got one question here. I got 2 questions here. So first of all, like, you read that. I'm just trying to see if I read this same thing, would I get that this is what I gotta do? Okay, with you there. No, like right here, like what? Why is this mean?
Yeah. Okay, I will read this out for you as a human would read it.
Yeah.
So anytime you see square brackets, that means optional.
Okay.
That's a convention you're going to find in many documentation, many manuals, technical things. You will find this. Square brackets means optional.
Okay.
And angle brackets means required. Okay, so an IDX stands for index, usually. So in square brackets, it's saying index, that's required. That's why we said param1, it's required. Column, that is literally a column, and variable name. But the variable name is optional, so you could just refer to this as param1 in your code and not refer to it as scroll progress if you wanted. I don't see a reason for that, but you can. And then there is the pipe symbol. The pipe stands for OR. Remember how it stood for OR when we were doing bitwise operations? Stands for OR in this situation as well. So if you want, you don't have to specify the index. You can just give it a variable name.
Cool.
Then, but I think it's a good idea to have the index, because with the index, we can have, again, that trick where we have some spaces in the interface. So we did this in JSFX where you would have some gaps, and you do that just by skipping some numbers. So that's the same thing you can do here. So I think it's advantageous to have the index there. And then the quotes are literal. That's why I said to just put the quotes there. And then square brackets again. That means optional. So I suppose there are default things for these variables.
Cool.
And what's important is that there are no commas to separate the numbers. So I don't think you need to put the commas, or you may not even be able to put the commas there.
So just space?
Yes.
Okay. And then my other question is...
you missed one. And can you maybe just open a different preset just to see if we got the syntax similar to the convention?
Sure, let's go with... I know...
Oh, hang on. Do you really want to do that in this effect? Won't you lose your code?
Sure. I thought we won't because it's saved as a preset.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
But let's go with one of the always good John Tidy. Yes, they are spaces. Yes.
It looks similar. But it seems like for param5, John decided not to have a special name for it. It's just called param5.
Oh, interesting.
See, and they John is even using param5 as the variable name below. It happens that the next line is using param5.
Cool.
There you go. So yeah, we can come back to our video processor, and you are going to ask something.
Yeah, my question is, so I guess the thing we can't do with the wipe preset, which I can also show, which in my opinion is also named incorrectly. What should be vertical wipe is actually a horizontal wipe, and vice versa, but somebody can school me on that. But anyway, yeah, so the thing we do with wipe is that we just go pixel by pixel. We don't care if, say, the underscore is a longer character than the I character. So you could fall at some point in the scroll, if you pause it, you could fall in halfway through character A. In ours, we want to do it character by character. So in a way, the increments that we're going to choose need to be like somehow aware of the character. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Yes. So now that we have the progress, we are ready to start the logic of this video processor. Well, we need a couple of ingredients. First of all, we need to know the size of the string that we are printing. And we need to take a subset of this string with the given size multiplied by progress. So I guess at this point, we may want to have a variable for this. And by the way, did you notice that when you introduce the wipe, now we have a wipe between the thing that our screenwriter generated and essentially a black screen or junk? Isn't that something?
Yeah.
So,
and would you also agree that this is a horizontal wipe and not a vertical wipe at all?
I don't have a strong opinion.
Okay.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I don't really know.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so from a video processor's perspective, the output of the previous video processor is just the frame coming in. You could apply this video processor on a track that contains video, and the frame would come from the video. Or you could apply a video processor that processes the result of the previous video processor, which is exactly what we're doing right now. Okay, so how about we introduce that variable that we had a variable in the script to begin with, and we removed it. And the variable contained the string that you're going to write. Or maybe we get the variable from the item name.
That would be nice.
Yeah. Let's start with the simplest thing, and then we can try to get the...
We can pimp it.
Oh, no, actually, it's not that hard. So let's just get the item name.
Cool. Is it like get item name something?
It is input get name. So what I did is I went to Visual Studio Code and I searched for get, and I happened to be lucky, and the first thing that came up was input get name. So it receives two arguments. The first is the input. Well, what is the input? It is either so I'm reading the documentation. It says gets the input take name or track name. So do we want a take or do we want the track name?
No, we definitely want take. We don't want track.
Yes. I suppose that we can pass just the number 0 there, and that will be the current take. But
so 0 would be current take, pow?
Let me see.
We can always cheat off of...
Yeah. We can cheat, but sometimes I have to do this by trial and error. There is no documentation for anything. It's a mess. In any case, so let's start with 0, and if it doesn't work, then I have a couple other tricks up my sleeve. But is this effect right now a take effect?
It is on a track. I can put it on a take.
Okay, yeah, drop it on a take.
Ship lamps. And I'll bypass this for a sec, and I will open this for a sec, and I will remove the vertical wipe. And for some reason, it didn't bring some of the... Oh yeah, okay. I see what you're doing here. Hold on. Yes, please. And I'll just go to that thingamajig right here. And okay, this is on the item, and it's still lost that bit of code that we just wrote. So
Yeah, probably because it wasn't saved. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
okay, so input get name 0,
Whatever.
and do I put in?
And then there is something special. Yeah. So this second variable is special in 2 ways, at least. It's a special variable. It's a very special one. The first way in which it's special is the kind of value that it contains. I said before many times that in EEL2, all variables are numbers. This is not going to be a number. It's going to be a string. So what gives? Well, it is a number, actually. It's a very weird concept, but the way that EEL2 works is it's going to take this string and it's going to store it somewhere in memory. Similar to how we can store samples in memory using JSFX, but not quite the same. It's not a big buffer that we slice in different ways. No, it's just internally somewhere down in the ReaFIR implementation, it will allocate some piece of memory and it will put the string there. And it will return to us a number, which is the position in memory, the address to that string in memory. Now, you don't have to conceptualize this way. You don't have to think about it this way. You can just pretend that I put a hash before variables that are strings, but the hash is there to mean address of. So it is a special variable because it holds an address. It's still a number because every variable in EL2 is going to be a number, but it's going to be a special number. It's an address. Cool. And we had addresses in JSFX, but they were not this. They were addresses into our big buffer. They were not addresses into the bowels of ReaFIR implementation. So the hash stands for a very special kind of memory address that has been allocated for us. So that's the first way in which this variable will be special. It is an address to a place in memory that we did not allocate. It's a place in memory where the string lives. And this number can be passed around to other functions, as we are going to see in a moment. So that's the first way. The second way in which this variable is special is that when we call input get name, we are not passing this variable as an argument in the sense that input get name will work with this value for us. No, it's not going to print this value in any way or anything like that. No, input get name returns something to us. Input get name specifically returns the name, as it says. So it returns something, but we don't say hash str equals input get name. No, we pass a variable to input get name. Input get name, remember that's an address, right? It's an address in memory. So input get name will relocate that pointer, that location in memory. It will relocate that pointer to point at the string. So we are passing as an argument a pointer to a place in memory, and input get name will redirect the pointer to point at the string. It's a crazy concept because we are passing as argument something that effectively works as a return. And that's something that happens in C and C++. It's a leftover of these languages. That's why EL2 works this way. Now, you can just imagine that this is just a return and that the hash just says this is a string, if you want to conceptualize it that way. But that's the full story of what's really going on. The hash stands for pointer off, and str will be pointer to a region in memory where the string is allocated by ReaFIR. We don't allocate the memory ourselves. So now you can give this any name. It will be the variable name. You can call it str if you want, or you can call it
everybody
text
calls
as
it
the
text,
previous.
So I'll just do that, and I'll do this.
There you go. So now, instead of saying hello world, we can draw a hash text.
I was just thinking we can use this to codify text and audio. Can we? Can we call these in JSFX?
You can use the hash thing to manipulate text, which is usually used for graphical user interfaces. Yes.
So now, okay, so now, well, it went away for a second, I guess. Well, this does have a name. Every item has a name. So what's up with that?
Can you double check that it has a name? Oh, I think the name is right there.
Untitled MIDI item.
Untitled MIDI item.
Let's just change it to High Globe. And sometimes you do have to do this.
My first guess is that the input get name does not expect a 0 as the first argument, and sometimes you just have to try. Like try -1. Okay. I'm not kidding you. Just try -1.
Boom! You nailed it.
There you go.
Okay.
And don't even ask me why -1. Sometimes I just try a bunch of values and then it works. And there are some other functions in the documentation that you can try to use, like input, next item, and that will sometimes be necessary.
Once you know them, they're actually very smart. But without knowing them, it's like how the hell was I supposed to guess that? So another thing I figured out is in some of the preference windows, if you type negative values, they'd be frames. And if you type positive values, they'd be milliseconds. But how are you supposed to figure that out?
Yeah, a lot of video processor stuff it gets down to reading code.
Right. Cool. Yep. So now we got it. It does item name now.
Yes. So now we know the item name. But more importantly, we have this text variable that we will have to use. One of the things we need to do is compute the length of this string, right? Because we need to know how many letters to write, and that is progress times length of string. Now, let's go to the documentation and look for length.
Cool.
And there is something we can use. I just found it. Can you find it?
Let me do.
There it is.
Am I on it?
Oh, you found it. You found it. It's there.
Oh, okay.
It's right in front of you.
%C can be used.
No.
Oh,
further down. There you go.
Okay, Sterling.
That's your guy. So given a string, it returns the length.
Okay. I am guessing it would be like strlen, and then I just go hashtag text. I don't need to actually pass it as a string, right? Like double quote it.
There you go. Yes, and that will return something. So you need to assign that to a variable.
Text length.
Yes.
And Shabruni.
You got this. So now we have the text length. In JSFX, we would have the text length variable on the right pane, and then we would see that it contains the correct number. But in this case, we don't have that. Sometimes it's useful to print this on the screen. That's the only way that I found to debug my variables, and it's super annoying, but it is the only way I know of. So how about just for educational purposes, we do that. Now, text length is, we know how to draw something on the screen, how to draw text on the screen. It is the GFX STR draw. So go to the GFX STR draw line and copy and paste that line. So you have 2 copies. And maybe just change the second one to print at 200, 200.
Sure.
So it doesn't print on top of the other thing.
Yeah. And I'll even make it like 800, 800. So we get a lot of space.
And then save, and then that doesn't work, does it? Now the problem here is text length is a number. Oh, I guess we can peek. So that's another thing we can do. Just remember this. Select the text length variable and peek.
8, and
there you go. It has the right value. So yeah, that was better. We can just pick, and 8 is the correct answer, right?
Yes.
High globe, high space,
Yeah.
GLOBE. Yeah, 8. There you go. So that's the right thing. Peak, that's a good one. But in some cases, you may want to actually draw stuff on the screen. And how do you do that? Well, you have to pass a string to draw, right? But text length is not a string, it's a number. It's the number 8. So 8 may be interpreted as a position in memory and then whatever is in that address, but that's essentially junk. We need to convert this number into text. There is a function for you to do that, and it's the function that you were looking at. Above, when you saw that %C stuff, if you scroll further up, you will find sprintf.
Oh, sprint.
It stands for...
Hey.
Yes, it stands for S, is a string. So scroll further up.
There you go. Hey.
Yes.
This was in Maximus P2. This is why I'm excited.
Okay, so it's a string print format. It's going to format the string. Then first, it takes as argument the destination. That's going to be another variable. Again, it works like a result. It's like a return. So you give this a different name, like maybe text length str.
Okay.
Because that will be the string representation of the length. And then the second argument is the format. The format is a string which will be interpreted with this special values. So for instance, %d is a parameter as an integer. We have an integer, text length is an integer. So if we say %d, that %d will be replaced by the value that we are looking at. So how about we write it like this? Go back there to the format string and write maybe text length equals %d.
And text up here, you mean?
No, I mean, open double quotes. Text length equals.
Okay.
So text length will be literally written out as text length, but %d will be replaced by what? Well, do you see in the sprintf documentation where they have the square brackets? Now we know that these parts are optional. So, and then ... just stands for one or more of. Why is it optional? Because you may not have any of these placeholders, but we do have a placeholder. So the %d is a placeholder for a number. Now we need to give as a third argument to sprintf the number, text length.
So hold on. So wait, do I have to do this?
No. Everything that was on the screen was correct.
Cool.
Just go to the end, pass a third argument to this, which will be text length.
Cool.
And then text length string is something that we can
pass to
JSFX str draw.
Cool. Very nice.
And this is a useful technique for debugging in some cases when you cannot peek at a value for whatever reason. So now save and we still don't see anything.
Giving us the thing that we want. Oh, there it is. It was just somewhere kind of off screen.
Off screen.
Cool. Beautiful.
Yeah. So text length equals 8. That was fun. It was just for debugging. You may want to comment out everything else.
Okay.
And I think it's a smart idea to keep the sprintf right next to the str draw that corresponds to it.
Whoopsie daisy. And then I will just go. I don't know. Does this still work? No, I always forget which way it is. Yes, it does.
It still works.
All right. I do have to leave in 15 minutes. So let's do maybe a couple more things. But I have a student at 4.
Okay. Okay, so to wrap this up, I want to do a substring, and then the effect will pretty much work. It will just print in red with the default font and the default size, but at least it will do the effect of writing letters as they come in. So now, we know the length. What we want is to take, well, how many characters of the string do we want? Well, we want text length times progress, right? So maybe create a variable called how many characters to print or whatever you want to call it.
Let's go char to print, something like this.
Yeah, that is equal to text length times scroll progress.
Cool. I may rename these just to make them more logical later, and ship lamps.
So now you saved this, which means it ran. So can you peek the chart to print? It should be 0, right?
It should be 8 times 0. Yeah, it is.
So now scroll the progress a little bit, and let's see this number increase.
Okay, so 0.2. It should be 1.8. Wait. 1.6. Sorry, bad math.
Yeah. So now the problem is, how do you print a sixth of a character? It doesn't really make sense. So we need to take this number, which is a fractional number, and we need to round it. So we have 3 options. We can floor, taking the integer before it. So for 1.6, it would be 1. We can seal, take the ceiling of the number. So for 1.6, it's 2. Or we can round. So for 1.6, it's 2, but for 1.3, it is 1. We have 3 options there. I don't think it matters all that much, but you just have to pick one. Which one do you want to pick?
Let's go with round.
Okay, so round, to round a number, I think it's not in the documentation for for the video processor because it is just part of the EL language. But I think that you just say round.
Cool. If that didn't work, we'll just floor it since we know what's up. But round didn't return something.
Yeah. Just floor it because round is not a function apparently.
I've never seen round anywhere. It's just floor or ceiling.
Yeah, it's not hard to round. You just have to add 1 and then floor. Whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Continue. So you're taking the floor of this multiplication, and now chart to print will be an integer, right? Can you peek?
I'm assuming right now. Ship lamsies, yeah.
It is 1. Excellent. So now all we got to do is we have the text. We know how many characters we need to print. We just have to take a substring of the text.
One quick question in the meantime. I guess you can't do this. You can't make this step increment itself be a variable like text length. Like 1 divided by text length.
No.
Okay, whatever. Cool.
Yeah, no, that would be awesome, but no, I don't think you can do that because the range needs to be fixed and the steps need to be fixed. Okay, we have 10 minutes. So let's do this. There is a function to take the substring of a string. It is, can you go to the docs and just so we see it on the stream as well? Just search for sub and you'll find substring.
Sub, there it is. Copy substring.
Yes. The text is weird. Can you scroll to the left?
Scroll to the left. Oh, there it is.
There you go. So PHP style, PHP is another programming language. So it starts, str copy substring is what we need to call. So go ahead and write this.
Okay.
And we start thinking about the parameters that we need to pass. And for whatever reason, they have 2 closing parens. That doesn't make sense.
Okay, that may be just from the documentation, right?
Yeah, it's a typo in the doc. So the first string, I assume, is the string that we are taking a part of. Oh, no, it's not. So you can see that the second argument is called source string. So what is our source string? It is text.
Okay. And no quotations, because we are just taking what
No
is.
quotes, just hash text.
So just so I understand, what we're doing with this is we're taking a subsection of a full string. We're like taking the values apart, the ASCII values, and just going like, I want half of it. Okay.
Yes. And then where does it go to? What is the return of this? That's the first argument. That's the return. So there you can create another variable like maybe subtext or text, whatever.
I'll just call it whatever, substring text. And we'll eventually print
there you
this.
Go. Yes,
cool.
That's what you want to print at the end.
Offset.
Go ahead and change the JFX string draw to print substring text.
Cool. Whoopsie daisy.
And then the third argument for string copy substring is the offset. That's an offset from the beginning of the string to where you want to start the substring, but we always want to start in the beginning.
So -1?
I guess 0 is the beginning.
Oh, okay. 0 is the beginning.
And then ML, apparently from the documentation, I assume it stands for max length, which doesn't really make sense, but I think that's the length of the string we want to take a part of.
So that's text length?
Short to print. No, that's short to print. That's how many characters we want to take from the string. And then put a semicolon at the end and save, and I think we are good. I think that's it.
Yeah, and if I move this...
Only a single character.
Oh, buddy. So wait, that's it.
Yeah. And it's a wrap. We still have a lot of work to do. Of course, we want to select font sizes, colors, and then all the things we mentioned. But it's working more or less. So we have something.
Beautiful. Hey, that's
Wicked.
Great. That's so awesome. Very rewarding to have this. And I guess, so again, like if we're wishing for things, this is awesome because you can automate it and pause it. And I guess it would still be nice if we had a rate just so users who don't want to automate can quickly use it.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is
That's relatively easy to do. All you got to do is have another one of these sliders. That is which mode of operation they want to be in. So it's going to be one of those things that is like 0 or 1. And then if you are in the progress mode of operation, we do the code that we have on the screen. If you want to work in the other mode, we will have some if then else situation to toggle between the two.
And just to show folks, let's see it with automation. What the shite just happened? I think I don't know. I'm just gonna put it back to the rate that it was, if that's gonna be relevant. And I'll just do yap, 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 yap. Oh, beautiful. Aha. Cute. Lovely. There it goes. Oh, and it erases too, which is super cool. Very aesthetically pleasing.
So can you take note of the things that I want to do? I want to do font size, font color, positioning, and wrap.
Character.
So that's a big one.
The font itself.
Sorry, you said
yeah, so if you have long text, it will wrap around.
Font size, wrapping, position. I guess.
Oh, and we need to draw on top of something that is not a blue rectangle. So that will be helpful. Draw on top of the other frame, the frame that is coming in. So this acts as an overlay.
And I guess a lot of like these, like the font and the size and position, we can also just kind of copy from the stock text thingamajig. Yeah. Yep. Cool. Was there anything else? Font size, wrapping, position, draw on top.
I think that's what I can remember.
Cool. That is good. I guess we did this. And I guess we don't need a freeze function now that we have automation. So I can just kind of flatline one of these. And it waits on high. And then it goes to globe. Like this.
So you can do the sort of center and out. No, you can't do the center and out.
Not
But you can do left to right
yet.
and right to left.
Yeah.
You can do with the automation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can sort of think about how you would do the center to going out. You just, instead of the offset would not be 0, the offset would be somewhere in the middle, and the length. So you would need to do some mathematics to find the positions in the string that you want to print. But the real difficulty here is you need to GFX string draw in a way that is centered, because right now, if you start writing from the center, the string will move around. Yeah. So there is a way for you to say, I want to anchor the text box in the center, if I remember correctly. Cool. I think there is a way to do that.
All right.
Cool.
So that will be next week. I'm going to run. And thanks for joining us, Bo and Leandro.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having me.
And see you tomorrow on your thing, which is we're gonna just keep recording some percussion stuff, house percussion.
Yes.
And yeah, I also recently got the best gift. I got a bunch of FabFilter plugin license from a friend who's quitting music. That part is not nice to hear, but I got to buy it from him for very cheap. So I'm gonna do another string on Friday. Where I will just try out FabFilter plugins.
And you have a mixed feedback.
Yes, and I got that. I don't know when that'll come. It'll come at some point. Nobody in the channel really cares other than you about mixed feedbacks. So yes, so those are the things. Thanks everyone. Thank you, Leandro.
Thank you.
Keep on rocking in the free world, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So not out of the woods yet. Now we're out. We may not still be out.